Did Elijah and Enoch truly ascend to heaven? Hello, my name is Jairo Torres, and in this presentation I invite you to explore what the Bible reveals about this topic. I will start with a prayer, asking the Holy Spirit to lead us throughout this study. Let's keep in mind Paul's words in 1 Corinthians 13:12. Now I know in part. This reminds us that we all begin with only partial understanding. The first thing to note is what Jesus told us. In John 3:13, he says, "No one has ascended into heaven except he who descended from heaven, the Son of Man." This idea is reinforced in John 1:18 and 1 John 4:12, which state that no one has ever seen God. Additionally, in 1 Corinthians 15:20-21 and in Revelations 1:5, Paul and John explain that Jesus was the first to be resurrected. From these scriptures, we can infer that no one has been in heaven with God before Jesus. So if Elijah and Enoch are not in heaven, we should consider what might have happened to them. Let's consider the example of Elijah. After he commanded the arrest and killing of 450 prophets of Baal, as described in 1 Kings 18:40, Elijah faced persecution from Jezebel, King Ahab's wife, which is detailed in 1 Kings 19:2, and led to his escape. Elijah was under immense pressure to the extent that he prayed for death in 1 Kings 19:4. God recognized that Elijah was overwhelmed in 1 Kings 19:7 and revealed his three successors in 1 Kings 19:15-16. It appeared that everything was set for Elijah's departure. At the conclusion of 2 Kings chapter 1, Elijah declared the death sentence on King Ahaziah, marking the start of King Jeroham's rule in Israel, which coincides with the second years of King Jeroham's reign in Judah, as noted in 2 Kings 1:17. There were two kings with the same names. The passage states, "So Ahaziah died in accordance with the word of the Lord, which Elijah had spoken. And since he had no son, Jeroham became king in his place in the second year of Jeroham, the son of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah." At the start of 2 Kings chapter 2, Elijah is mentioned again, which occurs at the beginning of King Jeroham's rule, as noted a few verses early. In 2 Kings 2:3, Elisha, Elijah's follower, along with the prophets, were aware that the Lord was about to take Elijah away. The passage states, "The sons of the prophets who were at Bethel went out to Elisha and said to him, 'Are you aware that the Lord will take away your master from over you today?' And he said, 'Yes, I'm aware, say nothing about it.'" Later in 2 Kings 2:11, several witnesses saw Elijah being taken up to heaven. The prophets then sent 15 strong men to search for Elijah in the mountains and valleys, hoping to find where he might have landed. But by 2 Kings 2:16, they have given up. So what happened after that? In 2 Chronicles 21:12-20, Elijah makes a return near the conclusion of King Jeroham's of Judah's rule. Elijah sends a letter to Jeroham addressing the wickedness he has committed and warning him that his life is coming to an end. As a result, the Lord afflicts Jeroham with an illness that causes him death within 2 years. This passage found in 2 Chronicles 21:12-30, describes these events, naming Elijah as the letter sender in verse 12 and King Jeroboam of Judah as the recipients in verse 6. In summary, we have observed that Elijah did not ascend to heaven in the sense of the heavens as the dwelling place of God. Paul in 2 Corinthians 12:2 is clear, mentioning the third heaven. This is understood within the framework of the first heaven, which is the space where birds fly, and the second heaven, where the sun, the moon, and the stars reside. It is in this third heaven, the realm of God, that Jesus refers to in John 3:13 and John 1:18, and where Paul and John indicate that no one has seen God. To illustrate, when we are at an airport watching planes take off and rise into the sky, we know where they are departed from, but not their destination. Similarly, this is like the perspective Elisha and the other prophet had when they witnessed Elijah ascending into the space where the birds fly, the first heaven. The text indicates that Elijah was taken away from his enemies in Israel to Judah, much like the experience of Philip, one of the 12 disciples, after his encounter with the Ethiopian Enoch on the road from Jerusalem to Gaza. Philip vanished and reappeared in Azotus, about 30 kilometers away, as described in Acts 8:26-40. Philip's story is connected to Saul's persecution of Christians following Stephen's death. But what about Enoch? Regarding Enoch, Genesis 5:21-24 tells us that he vanished. The passage states, "Now Enoch lived 65 years and fathered Methuselah. Then Enoch walked with God 300 years, and he fathered Methuselah, and he fathered other sons and daughters. So all the days of Enoch were 365 years. Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him." In Hebrews 11:5, Enoch is listed among the faithful figures of the Old Testament, alongside Abel, Noah, Abraham, and Sarah. The verse says, "By faith, Enoch was taken up so that he would not see death. And he was not found because God took him up. For before he was taken up, he was attested to have been pleasing to God." In Hebrews 11:13, the writer explains that all these faithful individuals, including Enoch, died. The passage states all these died in faith, without receiving the promises, but having seen and welcomed them from a distance, and having confessed that they were strangers and exiles on the earth. But hold on, didn't we just read in Hebrews 11:5 that Enoch was taken away so that he would not experience death? Indeed, Enoch was taken from his place to another, so that he would not face death at that time. However, as Hebrews 11:13 shows, he ultimately did die. In summary, Enoch and Elijah did not ascend to heaven, where God dwells. Instead, like Elijah and Philip, Enoch was supernaturally taken or transported to another place. Considering the widespread corruptions and moral decline of Enoch's time, which led God to cleanse nearly all humanity through the flood, it is possible that Enoch was moved to a safer location, similar to what happened with Elijah and Philip. As Paul notes in 1 Corinthians 13:12, our understanding is still limited. Why did Enoch die relatively young compared to others of his generations? his early death had been a form of protection, as Isaiah 57:1 suggests. The righteous perish, and no one takes it to heart. The devout are cut off, and no one understands that this is because of calamity that the righteous are cut off. When we start exploring a topic with the questions, we often end up with more questions than answers, highlighting how much we still don't know. Thank you for listening. Any insights that help us better understand the scriptures are always appreciated. Blessings, Jairo.